Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives overlooking the temple. Peter, Andrew, James, and John came and asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of age?" So he started to describe events that have been the subject of much study throughout generations. What today they call the Olivet Discourse. John was there. John the Apostle, he was there listening intently. And Jesus started to speak. And John heard Jesus talk about wars, rumors of wars. Even though these things should happen, Jesus says, don't worry, it's not the end yet. There'll be famines and earthquakes and pestilences as well. But no, this is not the end. Don't keep saying it's the end when you see all these things. It will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you. And you will be hated and betrayed. Many false prophets will appear and will deceive many. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony. Then the end will come. To John, the whole world was just Judea. But now Jesus was talking about all nations, baffling to say the least for John. Then Jesus got closer and he spoke softer, but more intensely. So when you see this standing in the holy place, the abomination of desolation, spoken about by Daniel the prophet, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Let no one on the rooftop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. There will be no time. Run. This is the time for you to retreat. But I will make that time short, Jesus said. And immediately after that, the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give light. These are signs of Jesus coming, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of heavens will be shaken. This is it. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So the abomination of desolation has to be in place first. What is this abomination of desolation, or the abomination that causes desolation? Jesus specifically mentions Daniel. And for John and the other disciples, and for my older discovery class students, we know and we have studied about abomination of desolation. In case you have forgotten, Daniel 9:26 and Daniel 11:31 mentions it. So for the Apostle John, he pondered over Jesus' words, yet he didn't puzzle himself over it. He knew that he had to do one thing that his Lord wanted him to do, and that was to spread the gospel to all nations. And that was what he did after that great day of Pentecost. He and the other apostles went out to preach the gospel. But now, as he sat on the Isle of Patmos, fully wrapped in vision, he recounted everything that Jesus had told them on the mount. And with the seals, the trumpets, and later we're talking about the bowls, he had seen the birth pangs, the 4 horses being played out. He had seen the disasters, the locusts, the military. He had seen the wars, the persecution of the saints, the martyrdom, and the gospel to be preached through the 2 witnesses, remember? All escalating. Now, he was about to be shown the full manifestation of what Daniel spoke about and what Jesus echoed, the abomination of desolation. Revelation chapter 13, turn to it, and welcome to episode 6. We ended chapter 12 with a vision of the dragon standing at the seashore. After pursuing the woman who was actually symbolizes the church, Celine, and tried to kill her, he now turned his attention to her seed, the believers, the ones who keep God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. This is the identifying mark of the faithful believer. And remember, it's twofold and cannot be separated. Those who keep God's commandments and those who hold to the testimony of Jesus Christ. The Greek word for commandment here is entolas. It's different from the word for law, which is normos. So the commands here would mean every commandment that Jesus had mentioned, including the 10 commandments. and they must hold fast their testimony about Jesus. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, 10 diadems on his horns and blasphemous names on his heads. If you remember the dragon, he also had the same, 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 diadems. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like a bear and his mouth like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of his heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but his mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. Daniel, yes, Daniel chapter 7. Remember these 4 beasts that came out of the sea. The 4 beasts seems to have merged into one power under the dragon. Who did the beast represent? Remember the names? The beast represented 4 kings, 4 rulers. Remember Babylon, remember Medo-Persia, remember Greece. Yes, these are the eras of the kingdoms. You're right, Elinda, the eras of the kingdoms, and then Greece. So this beast in Revelation 13 is a culmination of the 4 beasts in Daniel. Do you think this beast is political? Yes, Celine? Yes, if you say that it's culmination of the kings, the rulers, it would be political. The governments, are they merged together? They seem to be merged together. So it seems that way, isn't it? If we do some interconnectivity with Daniel. Then the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, 1260, 3.5 years. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, and that is those who dwell in heaven. So this entity rejects the authority of God. This entity goes so much as to blaspheme God's name. It was also allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe, people, language, and nation. If anybody has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken into captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. But here calls for the endurance and faith of the saints. If you were John at that moment, you saw that vision about that beast and all the things that the beast had done, what will come into your mind? Romans. Yes, the Roman Empire, because John, at that point in time, they were governed by the evil Roman Empire who had actually taken over the world, their known world, as well as persecuting the saints. All the traits point to the Roman Empire. If you were living in Judea in 167 BC, you will definitely pin it to Antiochus Epiphanes. And if you were living in the Dark Ages and you were a Protestant Christian and running away from persecution, who would you name as the beast? How about today? Who would you name as the beast today? Okay, every generation has seen its manifestation of the beast and its traits, and it will continue to be that way until Jesus comes back. Should we remember the names or should we remember the traits and the characteristics? Because it is going to be very dynamic until the day Jesus comes back. Then John saw another beast coming out of the earth. And this beast had 2 horns like a lamb, spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast. So first beast comes out of the sea, second beast comes out of the earth. And it seems to be a very nice beast with a lamb's face, but speaks like a dragon. He exercises all authority of the first beast and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship not him, but the first beast whose deadly wound had been healed. Second beast, religious or political? Yeah, could it be religious and political because it exercises all authority of the first beast? Could be both. He performs signs that even makes fire come down from heaven, miracles on the earth in the sight of men. Then he granted power to give breath to the image of the first beast that caused many to worship the image of the beast, the first beast that was killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand and on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Mark or the name or the number. Here's wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, the first beast, for it's a number of a man. His number is 666. Now, the Greek word for man here is anthropo, anthropology, anthropo. So it could mean man, or it actually may mean mankind that is opposed to God. Is it going to be a physical mark or symbolic mark? Either way, there's an economic issue involved. If you do not have the mark, you cannot trade, you cannot buy or sell. Some kind of sanction, isn't it? Then you say, hey, mate, teacher, the mark is on the forehead and the hand, not in your phone, right? You are right. And what is the meaning of hand and forehead? Is it a physical or a chip that some people say? What is the meaning? Remember, Revelation is quite symbolic, right? So back in Moses' time, and even up to now, Deuteronomy, right? The Israelites were told to tie the Shema, the commandments, on either their right arm or their forehead as a reminder of the commandments. Even up to today, if you look at them, there's a little box, right? Can't remember the name of the box that they actually tie on their foreheads when they go for their prayers. This was a reminder of the commandments. So the mark of the beast seems to be anti-Shema, anti-commandment, or dual Shema, counterfeit Shema, counterfeit commandment. But whatever it is, it will have to do with God's commandments. And the mark may just be symbolic of our loyalty to the commandments. Remember, right hand and forehead. Okay, how about the 666? But actually, the number 666 only appears once in the whole Bible compared to 7. And it's basically gematria, or nowadays they call it numerology. They put numbers relating to alphabets and they count the numbers. And many in those days have counted the number 666 to actually be Nero. And some have said 666 is the Pope, right? So you use gematria to do that. But more importantly of this chapter, not so much the number and things like that, but is the unveiling of the 3 components of the unholy Trinity. Dragon, beast 1, beast 2. This Trinity is aimed at going against and counterfeiting the Holy Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So chapter 13 is the unveiling of the abomination of desolation. Turn to the next chapter. But the next chapter shifts back to a short interlude, and the scene shifts to the 144,000, the faithful ones, the so-called special forces featured again, singing and worshiping before the throne. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. Remember Jesus' words? The gospel will be preached to the world, to the whole world. Then the end will come. So here is the angel now proclaiming the eternal gospel. And what is that? Worship him who made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. What is worship? Worship him. Bow down before him. Worship him. And Sabbath has a lot to do with worship in those days. Another angel, a second one, followed, say, follow, fallen. Fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. Talking about Babylon. And Babylon has always been a symbol of rebellion, of sin, of an enemy of God in the Old Testament. In fact, Peter would name Rome as Babylon. So here is the second angel. Then after that, the third angel followed, saying, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives a mark on his forehead and his hand, he also will drink of the wine of God's wrath, poured out full strength into the cup of his anger. And he will be tormented with fire, sulfur, in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Final warning for those who persevere. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Again, those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud seated on the cloud, one like the Son of Man, Jesus himself, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud. And he's talking to Jesus. Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. Harvest time. So he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. Power now lies in the hand of the Son of God, Jesus Christ himself. This is the good reaping. Then there's another reaping. Then another angel comes out of the temple in heaven with a sharp sickle to gather the clusters of grapes which are fully ripe. So the angel swung and gathered the grapes and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. Then I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and all those who had conquered the beast and his image, the number of his name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. You see, every intense scene in Revelation always ends with victory. This is the picture of ultimate victory for God's people. No matter how tough it is to be Christians, even today, no matter how much the pressure may come from family, may come from work, may come from institutions, may come from country, may even come from church. No matter how much the pressure and the persecution we get from outside and even from within, this is the sin that we must uphold. Because if we hold fast, we hold steadfastly, keeping God's commandments, holding fast to his faith, we will reach this ultimate goal. Everything else seems scary. You may not understand anything about the beast, about the dragon. If we hold on fast, keep God's commandments, hold fast to his faith, we will reach our ultimate goal of standing by the sea of glass, singing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. Both are victory songs. Both are champion songs. Are you willing to endure until the end? We all can if we resolve to stand on God's side. We all can if we start obeying his commandments right now. We all can if we live our lives sealed by the Holy Spirit until he comes in the clouds.